What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm also going to talk about some big news that just came out involving Tesla, as we saw some new developments with the Cybertruck, not to mention some new positions for Elon Musk and other figures. But let me first mention that I am not a financial planner, so make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. We deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on invested cash. Anyways, guys, tomorrow's going to be a crazy day. We have lots of big data coming out. We have the PPI report and Jerome Powell giving a speech. So I'll be talking about all of that a little bit later into this video. I'm also going to talk about the charts. Today was a very, very crazy day. The market saw a very interesting reaction to CPI. First, we got this little pop upon open, then we dumped by about 5 points, then we ran up 5 points, then we came back down by about 4 points, and the market closed very flat. Tesla did something very similar. We basically pumped upon open, we were up almost 5% to 344, then we dumped about, what is that, like almost 20 points, all the way down to 322, then we came back up to about 334, we went up about 12 points, only to come back down. So it's just back and forth price action pretty much all day. So the question is, what's happening for tomorrow and beyond? Let's first talk about Elon Musk and some big news involving Tesla. Then I'll talk about the charts a little bit, and then I'll talk about what's happening tomorrow and all that stuff throughout the video. So the first thing I want to talk about some things that Musk has been tweeting about. He talked about Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, and we have some big news that had come out. So basically, Elon Musk and Vivek have been chosen to co-lead the Department of Government Efficiency in the US under the new administration. Now, the reason why I want to talk about this is because this news came out yesterday, and this is pretty big because this is now official. But also, there's been a lot of talk about how this could be negative for Tesla because Elon Musk will not have as much time for Tesla. He's going to be busy doing this and that. Remember, guys, we can't always say that. You have to remember that Elon Musk is not directly involved in everything. It's more like he's an overseer above the things that are going to be happening. And I think that's very important for his role. Now, for us to say, will this affect his ability to lead Tesla? We can't count him out. He is very, very strong, and he's very, very incredible at his leadership abilities, and he's very good at managing his time. So I do believe that he will still lead Tesla very well alongside the different companies that he has. Now, if you don't believe me, here's what we want to do. Let's just give him a chance. Give Elon Musk a chance to be a part of this. Let him do what he has to do, and we'll see how well he performs during the next earnings. We'll see how well Tesla does as well. And believe me, guys, I'm very optimistic for Tesla nonetheless, even if Elon Musk is still a part of this. Now, what is the significance of him now being a part of Doge or the Department of Government Efficiency? Musk has said that either we get the government efficient in the US or America goes bankrupt. So that's actually a very, very important claim that he's making. And I actually agree with that. So we have a very, very big debt problem here in the US. And then it's not just the debt, but also the interest we have to pay on the loans. So the government has to become more efficient, in my opinion, for things to remain more sustainable, because it's going to be very difficult for our children and our children's children. The list goes on. So I agree with Musk on this. Something has to be done. And his whole team are going to be coming together, and they're going to be continuing to look at how the government's using this money. He mentioned that the world is suffering because of overregulation. He believes that it's going too far and that we have to really be careful with how we do this. I want to just say, and I've said this in my previous video, regulation is important. We need things to be regulated for safety of everyday individuals and many other factors. But at the same time, we have to be careful with how we regulate, because it could slow down innovation. It could slow down a lot of different things. So this brings about the importance of Musk getting involved in all this. So will this be negative for Tesla? In my personal opinion, as of right now, the answer is no. We actually got a nice pump once this news came out. Tesla is more optimistic about this because when it comes to the developments of new technologies, the NHTSA is going to be involved. That's a governmental agency. And when the NHTSA, is involved, you have to think about the fact that Elon Musk being in position now over these very, very important departments gives him a bigger say in what could be said and done, and also it's going to influence new regulations. So that's going to be very important for the robotaxi. So I believe that Musk made a good move because you're thinking about the long term of Tesla and how dependent it's going to be on regulation. You have to think about that. That's going to be massive for AI development and the robotaxi. So I think that it's very, very bullish news that Musk is now involved and he's able to talk directly to the president. He's involved in this big branch of government. But simultaneously, there is always that possibility it could kind of sway him away from Tesla for a little bit longer than before. If you look at his Twitter page, he's just almost always talking about politics now. He rarely talks about Tesla. I want to account for that. Now, just because he's doing that, it does not mean he's not going to be a good CEO. He could still lead Tesla very well despite that. And that's why I'm saying give him a chance. Give him a chance to lead through Doge, through Tesla, and all these different ways, and we'll see how well he does. And let me say one more thing. Okay, I don't always want to talk about politics. I'm not even trying to get too political when I say the things I say. I'm simply just talking about this because of Elon Musk, because he is the CEO and he's involved in all this. Just know this. If you are a Democrat, if you're a Republican, whatever side you're on, I respect that. But I think that the majority of Americans can agree, no matter what side you're on, that the government can use money more effectively. And we have to be very careful with spending because of the debt that the US is in. So that in turn makes a very, very important position that Elon Musk and his team are in. And I think that there's a very, very important aspect of Doge. We really need this in America. We need to improve the way that we're using money. And this could benefit all Americans, people on the left, the right, people who are very poor, people who are, all over the place. So that's why I think it's very important. I just want to say that whether you like Musk or not, if you like the administration or not, it's up to you. I respect that. But just know that this is important for our country. And I just want to give them a chance. I want to give Vivek, Elon a chance. I respect them for the work they're doing. And let's just hope for the best. We're Americans here. We're in this together. And let's just hope that things become a lot more efficient and we start to see more disclosures. I think Musk also announced that any changes that Doge makes are going to be reported on the internet. So we're going to be finding out what they find out about the government and things just like that. So let's keep our heads up. Let's be positive no matter what side you're on. And we'll just continue from here just to see how things end up going. There's also some news right over here involving the Cybertruck. This came out in the morning that the Cybertruck has been hit with a recall because they have to replace particular parts. This is a physical recall. It's going to be affecting over 2,413 of these Cybertrucks. They were basically built between a particular time period. There have been some issues that have been emerging because of the transistors involved in particular parts, and they have to do a very, very important physical recall as part of why Tesla saw a bit of a dip. So, yeah, I mean, some headlines were coming out saying this is the sixth recall in the last 10 months. I want to debunk that because half of them were actually because of they were basically fixed through software updates, so we can't really say that. But I just want to make it very clear that this one in particular is a real recall. They have to bring them back in and they have to actually replace parts. So it's very important. If you want more information about this, just watch my video where I talked about the Cybertruck recall. It's my third to last video. Anyways, let's talk about more news. Tesla had 123.6 million in volume. I am noticing a downtrend in volume. We had 200 million in volume on, I believe, Monday. For Tuesday, we had about 158 million, and now today we have 123 million. So volume is going down and down and down on Tesla. It's slowing down a little bit. This is completely normal after so much upside. That's still above average, though, despite that. Short volume is still going up a little bit. And then Wedbush is saying Tesla is going to outperform the market, which is bullish news. You also have the price-price ratio continuing to remain elevated as Tesla is still holding up very well. And then on top of this, just know that Thursdays tend to be green about 48% of the time. And we've seen more volatility at 11 o'clock a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, so that's your data on Tesla. Those are what these different metrics are suggesting. What do I see for the share price? I'm going to talk just briefly about this. I'm going to talk about why tomorrow is going to be important. We are currently range bound on Tesla. We like to get bought back up around the 320 area, but we've been rejecting off the 340 zone. So we're making lower highs right here. We're actually making lower highs. And you can see how CPI affected the market in Tesla with the pump and dump followed by another pump. Tesla's still close to the green, but it was very flat. So was the market. So now we have something else that's going to affect us. I want to talk about tomorrow. Okay. Right now, the market's like a salad. We had some green, some red all over the place. For the most part, it was flat. We saw tech slow down a little bit. We saw finance kind of flat alongside retail, and other things were very, very flat. But for tomorrow, we have two big catalysts coming out. The first one is 1 hour before the stock market opens. At 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the PPI data report coming out. PPI is just like CPI, except it's on the wholesale producer side. So it's producer inflation. We're basically expecting PPI month over month to go up just a little bit by 0.2%. We're expecting core PPI to be around 0.3 to 0.2%, the same as before right over here. we're expecting core PPI year over year to be around 3 to 2.8%, so very close to before. And then last but not least, we're expecting an increase in PPI year over year between 2.3 and 2.2%. So one thing worth mentioning is that PPI has been very correlated with CPI lately. When CPI came out today, everything was aligned with expectations and decent, except for CPI for all items year over year. This was at 2.6%. This was good. It was aligned with expectations, but the problem was it was a slight increase. And when you see slight increases in CPI, they could lead to some concerns because if this consistently increases again during the next reports, that could be a sign that inflation is coming back up a little bit. So you want to be very careful. This isn't really enough data for us to say inflation's coming back up. We have to be worried, but just know that there is that possibility. So we have to be a little bit careful. This makes me suspect that tomorrow PPI is going to be decent. Everything's going to be aligned with expectations, but PPI year over year for all items, this may also be aligned with expectations, but there's going to be a slight increase, just like how CPI had that. So this might not be that great. Maybe the market kind of pumps a bit, then dumps and continues to trade sideways as a result. That's the most likely case for CPI, a more sideways price action, just like that of Tesla. However, at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, not too far from market close, we have the big guy, Jerome Powell, giving a speech. So when Jerome Powell opens his mouth, the market tends to move. If he's optimistic about the economy, he could pump the markets going into like the next day, or he could cause a rug pull. But the odds are favoring he might actually pump us because he has been pumping the market for the last couple of times when he has spoken. So just keep that in mind. Jerome Powell speaks tomorrow at 3 p.m. For earnings, there's not really much coming out. Tomorrow we have Disney before market open and Alibaba on Friday. Today we just got Cisco. The share price is down a little bit despite the fact that we had good earnings. We had an EPS of 91 cents per share above expectations of 87 cents. And we had revenue at about 13.84 billion above expectations, which isn't too bad whatsoever. Also a slight increase year over year. Their guidance is about the same as before, so there's not really much changes to their guidance. Their outlook is about the same as what we saw previously. This wasn't really enough to wow investors. The share price is kind of flat, maybe a little bit in the red, and that's pretty much it for our data. So that's it for what's happening with the markets right now. There's nothing too crazy that's going on. Tomorrow we have PPI data, and then we have Jerome Powell giving a speech. What do I think is going to happen? Well, one thing I want to call out is the fact that Tesla had this like falling wedge like structure. We did get a small bounce off of that because Tesla technically ran like 20 points. So it's actually a pretty nice move. Then it starts to come back down after that, and we're trading sideways. Just know this, when it comes to the way the market's moving, this is going to be dictated by Jerome Powell and what happens with the broader markets. Tesla does look like it may attempt to push in the mornings because if you look at the last couple of days, right, we pumped in the morning, then dumped, pumped in the morning right over here, then we dipped a little bit. We pumped in the morning, then dipped. So we're going to be looking for a pump tomorrow morning. There is one concern I have, though, and that's the fact that Tesla had a high here, came down, made a lower high, came down, made a lower high, then made another lower high compared to this high before it came down. So it's actually starting to downtrend a little bit. I think tomorrow after PPI comes out, the odds favor Tesla trying to push. If we push higher, look for 333 is our resistance near the 50 EMA, 336 and then 340. If we break 340, if we break 340, we turn back to bullish, and we're going to be looking for a pushback up towards 347. If we're bearish and we get a rejection, the main support to watch for is going to be at 325. If that fails us, we're looking for 322, followed by all the way down here closer to about that 317 area, very close to our 200 EMA. And if that fails us, we start dipping even lower. My prediction is this. I think tomorrow morning, Tesla's going to try to push back up, get very close to 340, just like how we did today. Then as the day goes on, it's going to be dumping back down close to 320, just continue to trade sideways. And then by the time Jerome Powell starts his speech, so kind of like a pump and dump is what's going to happen to Tesla. When Jerome Powell starts his speech, he might launch us higher. I think the odds do favor that, but we'll have to see about that. So there could be another run towards the end of the day if Jerome Powell pumps the markets. All right, so keep that in mind. A little pump and dump is most likely coming to Tesla. A lot of sideways price action in this range between 340 and 320, but then we could pump at the end of the day thanks to Jerome Powell. That's what I'm predicting for now. Volatility will increase next week, but for now, I think it's slowing down for Tesla. For SPY, we are range bound. We tend to reject off 599. We tend to get bought up around 595. We're just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Tomorrow with PPI coming out, we might pop a bit and start dipping in the morning, just like how we did for the last couple of days. Back down to 596. Then we could be looking for a push back up to 599 all over again. before we continue to trade sideways. I do think we're just going to be stuck in this range for an extended period of time until Jerome Powell gives his speech. If Jerome Powell pumps us, we're going to be trying to get back to all-time highs. And if he gives us the rug pull, we could be dipping back down lower. If 595 breaks, we go down to 592. I think tomorrow morning, we start off with a little pop back up to 598, then we dip back down towards the 596 area, bounce back up again. We just trade sideways around 598 for the majority of the day. But then when Jerome Powell starts his speech, he could launch us higher. We'll have to see about that, but that's what I think is the most likely case. For ES, we're also trading sideways. We tend to get bought back up around the 6,000 area. We tend to reject off 6,040. I think tomorrow morning what's going to happen is we dip a little bit, then we try to bounce back up to 6,030, come back down to 6,000. We just go back and forth for some time. If we lose 6,000, though, we could turn a little bit more bearish. We'll have to see if that ends up holding. But as of right now, we are range bound. So we're going to likely just see a lot of choppy sideways price action for now. And then when Jerome Powell opens his mouth, he could pump us higher. So we'll just have to see about that. For other factors, we have Nvda. Nvidia looks a little bit more bearish. We have a double top-like structure from a technical standpoint. This does tend to favor a test of our 200 EMA. If we break past 147, we turn back up to about 148. And if that breaks, we're looking for 150. If we end up losing 145, though, we're looking for a dump back down towards 143. I presume what's going to happen tomorrow is we kind of pop a bit towards 147. Then we start dipping back down to the 145s near the 200 EMA, or a little bit below that before we see some buyers step in again. So a pop and then a dip lower as we look a little bit more bearish, taking us back down to the 145s is most likely coming. But then we could get a bigger bounce if Jerome Powell gives us the rockets, if he launches the market up. So we'll have to see about that. For now, look for a pop and a dip that's looking a little bit more favorable. Bitcoin's holding around the 90,000 area. It's a very, very tough psychological area. And we've been range bound. We have support at 86,000 and resistance at 90,000, not to mention 90,000 or 93,000. Tomorrow, we're going to likely push again back up to about 92,000. I think we might be testing previous support becoming resistance. Then we dip back down to 90,000, just kind of trade sideways until we hear what Jerome Powell has to say. But I still think Bitcoin's going to remain elevated. For NQ, we're range bound. We tend to reject off 21,250, and we tend to get bought up around 21,100. I think we just go back and forth, look for a dip tomorrow morning to 21,100, a bounce back up, some sideways price action. It is looking a little bit weaker than SPY, though, so if it does lose 21,100, we could dip a little bit lower. Look for a dip and a rebound as the most likely cases, but there is a risk we do dip a little bit lower, and we could get closer to the lower 21,000 area, maybe a little bit below that. There is a possibility of us getting closer to 21,000 flat. So just keep that in mind. A dip and a bounce is most likely coming, and then maybe some more downside. That is a stronger possibility. We'll see what Jerome Powell causes, but I just want to say the Qs and NASDAQ are looking a little bit weaker. For the QQQ, however, this is very flat right now. We're getting bought back up around 510, and we tend to get rejected off 515. Look for a push back up to about this 514 area, a move back down to about 510, and a lot of sideways price action between 510 and 515 for the majority of the day. I think we're going to see a pop with PPI in the morning, back up to 514, then a move back down to the 511 area, then back up for lots of sideways price action. And then we're going to be looking for a big reaction after Jerome Powell speaks. If he pumps the markets, we could be going back up to all-time highs. If not, we could be looking for a rejection. So we're waiting to see what the big guy has to say. Apple's range bound. I mean, we're rejecting off the 226 area. We're getting bought back up around 222. I think we could be dipping closer to 223.8 to 222 before we get bought back up. Look for a dip to the 223s and a bounce back up higher, and a lot of sideways price action in this range. I find that to be the most likely case. Apple might dip tomorrow to 223.8, then bounce back up and just continue to trade sideways. One thing worth mentioning is I also called out NEO. So if you look at like the 4-hour time frame, NEO is looking a little bit weaker. It is trying to base at 4.5. We called out 4.5. But just notice that when I zoom out like this and I zoom back in, you guys can see we have this head and shoulders like structure. That remains very prevalent, and there is still some downside risk to this. For Netflix, we're holding up very, very nicely. I mentioned to you all it might be pushing close to 830 and then to watch what kind of reaction we get. As of right now, we're going to hold up as we approach Friday, which is going to be the big event. We have a boxing match that's going to be held live on Netflix. So we could push for 835. If that breaks, we're looking for potentially 837 all over again. If we lose 828, we turn back down. I'm favoring a little bit more upside in the morning for 835, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. For Celsius, we look a little bit more bullish as we're trying to base at 26. If we break 28, we're looking for 29.4. And if we end up losing 28, 27. We're looking for 26 flat. I think tomorrow we dip a little bit, and as long as we don't lose 26, I think we bounce back up to 28. So look for a small dip in the morning, then a bounce as we're looking like we're building some momentum. So look for a dip and a bounce and a move back up to 28 as the most likely possibility. Unfortunately, Supermicro had some bad news that came out. There are a lot of risks to supply chain disruptions that are starting to go on with the chips, and that's the reason why we're seeing a little bit of a dip right over here. So this could dip lower. If we reclaim 20, we're looking for 22 potentially. If we can't reclaim 20, we're going to be looking for a dip back down to 18. I think the chart's favoring the chart's favoring downside. I think the 18s are coming very soon, if not below that. Let's look for 18, then potentially a target back down to 15. Palantir is very, very strong. It's actually looking quite strong on the 4-hour, but the issue with Palantir is this. We have a tough resistance around the 62.5 to 63 area. Our support's at 60, not to mention 58. I think that going into tomorrow, it might attempt to push back up to 62, but it's going to be trading sideways. 62 may be tested and move back down to about 60, and we might just trade sideways in this range for now. If 60 does not hold us, we dip back down, but look for a little bit of a push, possibly thanks to PPI before it continues to consolidate. That's the most likely case in my opinion. Rivian pumped very nicely as we predicted. It went up to about 13. Now it's starting to dip a bit. It might dip a little bit more tomorrow morning to retest previous resistance, becoming support at 11.69. So look for a dip to 11.69 into the 11s to 11.5 area before it tries to bounce again. That's the most likely case in my personal opinion. Yes, it depends on PPI. I'm not really a fortune teller, but I can't predict that. But we'll see how it goes. I think SoFi might dip closer to its 20 EMA. 13.2 may be tested. We'll see if it bounces off of this or not. So look for some downside as a stronger possibility. For a few more, we have the IWM, which is starting to downtrend. We've got to reclaim 236. Otherwise, it could be dipping back down. I think this is looking weaker. If we don't reclaim 236, we're going to be dipping back down to about the 233 area. AMD is looking more bearish, just like Nvidia. We got to reclaim 140, but we got some bad news. So if it does not reclaim 140, we're going to be looking for a move back down to 138, then 137.5. ARM is looking more bearish, looking for 133. For a coin, we're holding up decently. We do have this gap to fill. It might pop to 300 and reject and start dipping back down to 173, so keep that in mind. Amazon is more bullish, looking for 215 as our target. If that rejects, and if we end up losing 214, look for 212. As long as we're above 214, though, we're favoring 216 plus as it looks bullish. Meta is dipping a bit. It might retest 575. We'll see if it bounces or not, but there is a risk of some downside to it. Microsoft is looking more bullish. We could be pushing for 428 as we look a little bit more bullish. As long as we don't lose 421, we favor 428. Google might be dipping to 180. If that fills us, we're looking for a dip back down towards 178. So watch those levels very carefully. For other stocks out there, I'm just going to go over a few more. DJT is more bearish. We're looking for essentially a test of 28.9, followed by this imbalance fill for 26.5 if that breaks. The VIX is dipping for now. It's very flat. We'll see if it gets a bounce off 14. That is some key support, so we're waiting to see what happens with the data. The 10-year remains elevated. It could push hard above 4.5, which could slow the markets down. And the dollar's not really affecting the market as much. So my view of the market is we're just trading sideways. We could pump in the morning, then dip back down intraday and continue to trade sideways within our ranges. Tesla could also just see a little push tomorrow morning before it continues to trade sideways. Will we get a big bounce though? It's possible. If Jerome Powell gives us that pump at the end of the day, we could get a bounce on Tesla. So we'll just have to wait and see. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. I think this video is kind of long. Please have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow with another update before the market opens. Until then, have a great day and peace out.